Hello, my name is Jolie Rader. I'm COGOD's Director of Global Learning, and I'm here to talk a little bit today about integrating immersive international learning experiences into your resume. We'll talk a little bit about cover letters as well. Many of our students at AU participate in dynamic international programs, some students for a whole semester, others for a summer, some for a short-term faculty-led experience. But what we see is that often students don't really think about how to include those experiences in their resume. The reality is that can be a really crucial component of your time at AU, and so it's important to find a way to integrate those experiences into your resume and learn how to leverage them in the job search. So that's what we're going to talk about today. I think it's always important to start with just a little bit on study abroad statistics so you have an understanding of how unique your experience is. At a school like AU, a large percentage, more than half of our students, in fact, participate in some sort of an international experience. And it can seem like that's just something that everybody who's attending a university in the United States does. But the reality is you're actually a part of a relatively select group of students. So of the number of US students who study abroad is below 11%. It's 10.9% of students who study abroad as a part of their degree program. And of that tiny number, if you're a graduate student, only 12% are graduate students. You can shrink it down even further for graduate students and see that only 0.8% are graduate students in professional schools, and business schools are included in that. So the reality is, if you've participated in an international experience during your time at AU, you're one of a very select group of students. So let's talk a little bit about what experiential learning is, because often we group study abroad and international experiences into something called experiential learning. Essentially, anything that allows you to experience a profession as a way to deepen the understanding of what you're learning in the classroom is experiential learning. So things like internships, volunteer opportunities, if you're working on a particular case or a consulting project, are all experiential learning. The Association for Experiential Education defines it as a hands-on form of learning that begins with a concrete experience. And an important component is a focused reflection to connect what you've learned to broader concepts and life experiences. It's really easy to pick out things like internships as experiential learning, but it's also really important to know that there's a lot of aspects of just day-to-day life that count for experiential learning. So navigating a foreign culture, a different transportation system, learning to function in a foreign language, understanding how to utilize a different currency, those are all aspects and components of experiential learning. Advantages of experiential learning include familiarity with a new profession, networking, demonstrating and developing soft skills. So some examples of some of the skills that you'll gain from participation in an international experience. Effective communication across cultures. Certainly working with people in your host culture, but also you may be on a program where you're encountering individuals from across the world and you're navigating communication across a range of cultures. Certainly flexibility. Everybody who's studied abroad has experienced changes in schedule or having to adjust things based on public transportation. Maybe you're in a country where it's not uncommon to go on strike in protest of things, and that's given you some added challenges getting to and from classes. Keeping organized, public speaking, handling ambiguity and solving problems on the fly, adapting to a new cultural and professional environment, and of course, time management skills. We always recommend that you internationalize your LinkedIn profile as well, and usually our students will do this under the education section. So I have a couple of example bullet points here. The first is from a short-term faculty-led program. So you can say, I learned from executive level professionals at 14 international companies in 2 European countries, including and the list of companies. You could also say something like gain this knowledge, skills, and qualities necessary to engage responsibly and effectively in a global business environment. You can tailor what you use for bullet points based on your program. So if you participated in an international program where you completed a consulting project, you might put a little statement about your consulting project. Or if you participated in an internship or you did a semester-long program where you live with a homestay family, there might be different aspects of your experience that you want to highlight in your bullet points on your LinkedIn profile. Let's talk about resumes a little bit. And there's a number of different ways that you can list your international experience on your resume. So I'll give you a couple of different examples. The most common is for students to put it under the education section. You'd list it below the school information, and you can include some additional information to provide context. I'll show you some examples in just a moment. You can also have an experience section, and some people, in particular, people who are looking to work in an international or global field, will often add an international experience section. You can put your experience in a bulleted list, but you need to be somewhat selective in what you do, and it's really valuable to utilize action words. And finally, you can put it under a skills section, focusing on your top skills and those that you can expand upon in an interview. In particular, if there are certain skills that you gain from study abroad that are particularly relevant to the job that you're applying for, you may want to rotate these out. So if you've done an international immersion, and this is just for our graduate students in particular in our online programs, if you've done an international immersion and a domestic immersion, you may want to represent those programs differently. And if you have participated in a number of experiential programs across both your undergraduate and graduate programs, you might consider grouping those together. So here's the first example. This is under the education system, under the education section, rather. You'll see each degree has the international opportunities specifically bulleted out. So under the master's degree, there's 2 different experiences, not a whole lot of detail to them. And under the bachelor's degree, there's 2 different international experiences listed as well. Here's another example under the education system section, and this is a student who participated in a summer program, and they added a little bit more detail here about what they did on that summer program. So they focused on the language skills that they gained on that program, but also highlighted problem-solving skills and global awareness through immersion in a foreign culture. This is an example of a resume with a separate international experience section. Again, very often people who have had multiple international experiences will choose to group those study abroad experiences together in this way. So you'll see this is a student who participated in both a short-term international program, and they highlighted a little bit about what that program was like. And they also participated in a semester-long program in China. Each experience has some relevant highlights. Here's another international experience section, and this is a student who participated in a short-term program in China, focused on cross-cultural communication. Again, they added 2 highlights about that particular program. This is a student who chose to list it under the degree program. So you'll see that they listed some of their other highlights, including Dean's List. Under the degree program, they included relevant coursework, and this is another way that you can list your international experience. So if you in particular have done a course that has a faculty-led international travel component, you can simply list the course information under relevant coursework. And this is another student who participated in a short-term multi-country program, and they included some really good highlights, including overcoming language barriers through independent travel. So that's something often people don't think about, the components of studying abroad that are outside the parameters of the program, but many of our students choose to stay a little bit longer or use their free time to do some independent travel. And there's definitely ways that you can highlight that experience in your resume as well. This is a great example. So in terms of cover letters, sometimes the specifics of the job description might not actually seem relevant to your international experience, but a more general description of your experience can be a great way to demonstrate your skills. So here's a sample. My desire to learn about and make connections between a wide variety of subjects keeps me constantly searching for new ideas and opportunities to better understand the world around me. This manifests itself in my strong interest of travel. For instance, I was able to participate in 2 dynamic immersion experiences as part of my MBA program, traveling to Montreal, Canada, and Dubai, United Arab Emirates. While on both programs, I was able to meet with a number of business executives in the fields of marketing and human resources to better understand the challenges they encounter on a daily basis. So a couple of questions to consider as you start to think about how you want to integrate your international experience into your resume and into a cover letter. What was the biggest challenge I faced while on this immersion or time abroad? How can I leverage that challenge and how I went about solving that challenge and include that on my resume or my cover letter? What were the one or two things that I liked most about the experience? And what were the one or two things that bothered me most about the experience? Have I noticed any changes about myself since returning? Do you view your intended career path differently? What was the most significant thing I learned about myself from this experience? How did my experience change or not change my expectations, career goals, or life plans? When you're interviewing, it's really important to talk about your experiences in terms of the transferable skills gained. So if you fast forward ahead and you imagine that an interviewer is asking you about your study abroad experience, they say, I've looked at your resume, I see you studied abroad. Tell me about that experience. What are the kinds of things that you want to say? All too often, students just respond with, oh, it was a really awesome experience. I had so much fun. And that's as far as it goes, but that doesn't really convey any added value. So you want to think about, how does your experience actually add value to the organization or the job that you're interviewing for? So here's some examples of how to do that. Describe a time in which you had to adapt to a new situation. Provide an example of your ability to work independently or in a team. Tell me about a time when you had to work under pressure, and describe your time management skills. Couple of final points. Again, it's really important to note that your time abroad makes up a significant component of your degree program at AU, but don't make the assumption that employers understand how your program works. So if you say, yeah, I did an immersion program with my MBA, or I did a summer internship program, don't assume that the person that you're interviewing with really understands what that means and what that program looks like. You might need to expand upon it a little bit. The international experience carries as much career value as you can articulate. So it's really important that you make sure to articulate what the career value of that experience was. The out-of-class components can carry as much value as the academic components. So thinking about traveling long distances, dealing with time zone changes and jet lag, balancing your responsibilities at work, handling delays and cancellations, managing language barrier. But again, it comes down to how you talk about those experiences. So that's the end of the presentation. If you have any follow-up questions, you're always welcome to contact me at ksbabroad@american.edu. Thanks again, and have a wonderful International Education Week. Bye-bye.